What's up everyone? Hope everyone's doing okay. Just wanted to do a little video comes from a thread. I done a thread the other day on Twitter talking about fat loss and how I'm going about getting lean at the moment. Now, I started dieting last week, so I've been in a deficit for just over 7 days now. I went over on the thread some of the things that I'm doing to make sure this cut goes successful. So there's three main things I just want to talk about, which I think a lot of people don't really understand when it comes to dieting, and a lot of people fuck up on these things. Now, this isn't just some basic fat loss video where I'll say, oh, eat in a calorie deficit and drink more water and sleep is important. They are vitally important, but I want to get a bit more in detail with three big things that'll really help your fat loss phase be more successful, so you don't fuck yourself up and get excessively fatigued and the cut goes to shit because you fucked up on these principles. Okay, so number one, it's lower overall training volume. Now, because you're in a calorie deficit, the body doesn't have the same recovery abilities as we would if we're well fed and we eat in a surplus. Okay, so because we're in a deficit, you got to look at it like we don't have as much raw materials for growth and recovery. So why do we want to push our body over the edge and go into that red zone when we haven't got the ability to recover? What we want to do is just enough stimulus to keep the muscle hanging around. Okay, so we get in the gym, just enough volume, and then we get out. Okay, so for most people, anywhere from 10 to 20 sets per muscle group per week is going to be a good volume range to be in. Now, I'd definitely recommend starting on the lower end of that. Now, let's say for quads, you want to train your quads. So you hit your quads twice a week and you're going to hit an overall volume of 12 sets for the week. You might do 6 sets of squats or 4 sets of squats and 2 sets of leg press on Monday. So that's 6 overall sets. And then on the following Friday, you might do a variation like 4 sets of pause squats and then 2 sets of leg extension. Okay, there's 12 overall sets for your quads. That's enough stimulus. For example, instead of when you're in a calorie surplus, your overall sets for the week for quads, it could be pushing towards that 20 range. Okay, so can you see the continuum? You've got 10 sets per week here and then 20 here. You want to be more on the minimum effective dose that we need just to keep the muscle mass hanging around. Okay, it sounds simple and it is, but it's one big thing that people fuck up on, is that they still try and train with the same amount of volume as if they're well fed. Okay, move the camera again, it keeps moving. I need to get a tripod to stop this happening, but it is what it is, we just do it raw. Right, so that's number one, lower overall training volume. Number two, we still got to train hard. Okay, I don't know how many times I've seen it where people go into a deficit and they just start training like a bitch. They start doing all sorts of higher rep sets with less rest in between and they're not going close to failure, and they start chasing the pump. So they completely switch their training. So the muscle that they built through a lot of heavy training, sets of 6 to 8, the big movements, and all of a sudden they start training like a weirdo and not doing what they was doing to build the muscle. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever. As I said in point number one, the only thing that really should change is the amount of overall volume should come down. You still got to train hard. Okay, you still got to take all of your sets to 0 to 3 reps in reserve. Now, what does that mean? You want to be going close to failure. Okay, so 0 reps in reserve, then all the way to 3 reps in reserve. All your sets want to fall on that continuum. You've got 0 reps in reserve, which is failure, and 3 reps in reserve, which is 3 reps shy of failure. So 2 reps would be here, 1 rep here, and 0, and that's failure. So you've got to be in that continuum again. If you're doing a set which you could do 6 or 7 more reps with, it's fucking pointless. It makes no sense. Okay, so still train hard. You've got to use the big movements that you normally use when you're in a surplus, or your big compound lifts, sprinkle in some isolation work, but train close to failure. Not exactly at failure, but in that range of 3 to 0 reps in reserve. Okay, hopefully that makes sense, because if you start training like a bitch, you're going to fuck yourself up, and it's a great way to lose muscle mass when you're dieting. You still got to train hard. Okay, and the third and final point, this is something that a lot of people don't even think about, it's your exercise selection. Now, where I've just said about you've got to stick with the same movements that built your muscle, or the big compound lifts, that's true, but there's also things that we can do to make the stimulus to fatigue ratio even better. So we pick movements that we're forced to use less weight with, which gives us a great stimulus on the muscles without the added neurological fatigue. So things like, here's what I'm using for when I'm in my dieting phase now. I'm using things like a plat squat, where I have my heels elevated on a plate. It causes more knee flexion in the bottom. Now what that does is, because of the extra range of motion in the bottom, okay, more range of motion, I can't use the same weight as I normally would in a squat. It becomes a lot more difficult. Never mind when you add a pause to that as well. So I'm increasing the range of motion and adding a pause on the squat, making the squat even more difficult. Now I can still get a great stimulus on the lower body without all the excessive fatigue that I would with a normal squat. Does that make sense? So that's one, it's like a plat squat. Number two, a Romanian deadlift. Now, I took conventional deadlifts from the floor completely out of my training for a little bit now. I'm just going to be doing Romanian deadlifts now. What's good about Romanian deadlifts is they start from the top, okay? So it starts with an eccentric contraction. It's not a concentric contraction straight from the floor. So we're forced to use less weight again. So it's another great way to overload the muscles of the posterior chain without deadlifting from the floor, which can cause a lot more systemic and neurological fatigue. So RDLS are another great option to throw in there. For upper body, movements like the Larsen press, which is a bench press with the feet up. That way you can't use leg drive. You're forced to use less weight again. It's just all stimulus on your pecs and your delts, tries. All the upper body just has to do all the work. So it's exactly what you want in a dieting phase. Exercises where you're forced to use less loads, but you get a great stimulus. It's a no-brainer. Also, an underrated concept that people don't understand is it's actually loading the spine. So when you're training back, if you can start doing a lot of chest supported rows, the chest supported rows with dumbbells, with a machine, seal rows, pull downs, pull-ups, these are all ways to train the back without actually loading the spine through like barbell rows and all that type of stuff. So that's one thing that I sub out when I'm dieting. I don't actually load my spine with any sort of row movements now. It's all chest supported stuff, things like seal rows, a lot of pull-ups and pull downs. That way I spare my spine as well. I save on my systemic fatigue exercises, which are really gonna fuck me up, is the things like the squats and deadlifts. I save it for that. I don't want to be doing squats, deadlifts on top of all sorts of rows when I'm dieting. It's not the best way to go about dieting, okay? So that's 3 tips that I use when I'm dieting, and I use with clients also. And I think if you're trying to diet and do it the right way, and get a successful cut without really fucking yourself up and being excessively fatigued and not getting where you want to be, you need to implement these 3 things. Because if you try and train exactly the same as when you're bulking or in a calorie surplus, you're going to run into some problems. So you need to make these changes to do it the right way, okay? So just let me know what you think in the comments down below. Any questions or any topics that you want me to do any of these videos on, just let me know, because as I said, I'm going to be doing weekly videos like this. Comment below, let me know any questions you have, and I'll get around to doing more videos, okay? So I'll talk to you all soon. Hope you have a good one.